Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Logistics Executive TV. Today, we're talking to a very talented and accomplished young lady who is hailing from Australia. We're going to find out where very shortly. But this young lady is heavily involved in the industry in Australia from a logistics, transport, supply chain perspective. Had the great pleasure of meeting her at the CMAT Hanover Messe event at Olympic Stadium in Sydney a few months ago. And I'm delighted to be joined by Katharina Zink Attana. Kat, thank you for joining us.
Kim, thank you very much for having me and for the introduction. It's very kind.
Great to see you again. Of course, we caught up in Sydney a few months ago, and we've also known each other for some years in the industry as well. As I said, you've been heavily involved in industry matters as opposed to just your normal role. So your daytime job is that you are the Chief Commercial Officer with a fantastic company in Australia called Tasman Logistics Services. Where are you based, Kat, by the way? You're in Sydney or Melbourne?
Yeah, Kim, I'm based in Melbourne.
Okay. The dark city, nice and chilly down there under normal circumstances.
It used to be the most livable, and then we had 2 years of COVID, but it's still great.
Exactly. Lockdown city. So, Kat, so you're Chief Commercial Officer with Tasman Logistics Services, TLS. You've also been a Director and Senior Executive of a number of other organisations right throughout the supply chain ecosystem in Australia. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today also is the fact that you're a Director of Transport Women in Australia. So you've been heavily involved in a number of organisations across supply chain and logistics in Australia. Perhaps you can start by telling us a little bit about Tasman Logistics Services, your role, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the market for our audience, about what's going on in Australia at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. I guess Tasman Logistics Services is an Australian icon. We started 21 years ago in Tasmania, therefore our name, Tasman Logistics Services, and we really actually like that name because it shows our heritage. We started on the back of meats, Tasman meats, just basically moving freight across the Bass Strait, and moved on to container transport, and have most recently grown our footprint nationally. So we have warehouses across the East Coast, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Tasmania, and Perth. We offer still wharf transport, still Tasmania, but also road and rail services in both temperature controlled and ambient spaces. I guess as part of my role, I'm leading the growth path together with the team, and we have aspirations to grow significantly and at some point beyond our borders as well, but that will be for another day. So that's about my role at Tasman Logistics, and what is really important to us is service and quality, and our people most of all. So a bit of a point of difference there.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And you've had a number of very senior roles, both from a commercial and operations perspective, right across some of the big brand tier one logistics companies in Australia. So well done on the career to date. And you're only still young, so I'm sure it's going to keep on getting better. Hey, talk to us just before I get on to the leadership in the Transport Women in Australia, which I know you're very heavily involved in as a director. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the market at the moment. We're theoretically going into the peak season for logistics and transport and right across the supply chain ecosystem. Conditions globally, of course, have been a little bit repressed over the last 12 months or so, or since the end of COVID. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the market there, what you're seeing as some of the key trends, and how you're managing the business in the Australian environment.
Absolutely, Kim. So I guess, as you mentioned, the market is heavily influenced by the local economy, as well as I guess macroeconomic challenges that we're currently facing. what we found quite interesting, so usually there's a peak season. A peak season might start in August, September. There's certain events that always drive volume. So Father's Day, for instance, in September, and then going into Black Friday sales and a Singles Day in November leading up to Christmas. So anything August, September onwards all the way to January is usually peak season. This year, we had no peak season. Volumes dropped significantly globally. And we certainly feel that because we obviously handle containers from the wharf, but we also do interstate. Now, what I learned in my job is apparently chocolate and alcohol is recession-proof.
Especially in Australia.
Absolutely. So those two are still going really strong. And in the last 2 weeks, we've seen it's almost like everyone's wanting to catch up from August to September and trying to fit it into the last 6 weeks. So volume significantly increased in the last couple of weeks, especially domestically. And we're hoping for a strong finish this year. On the other side, like for instance, the logistics, which is also an area we offer in warehousing space, there's been a record low vacancy rate, the lowest in the world, like Sydney had the lowest in the world at some point with below 0.3%. Now the national vacancy earlier this year was at 0.6%, so extremely low. That means there's literally no warehousing space available. And to put this into perspective, every new person that we bring into Australia needs about 4 to 6 square meters of warehousing space for all their stuff. They're buying fridges.
That is a very interesting statistic. I have never heard of that algorithm before, or that statistic. So that's a calculation that's been done in terms of the warehousing space to cater for the consumer goods, etc., that any one person requires. Yeah.
That's correct. And if we're bringing in 500,000 new people, that means we really want to have 3 million square meters of additional warehousing space. And in 2020, we achieved 2 million, and this was a record year. So we are catching up. There's certainly more, space becoming available, and a lot of businesses have reduced their, just in case stock, not completely back to just in time, but they certainly are going back to reducing the inventory, especially in the retail space. So we're seeing a lot of subleases coming onto the market, and even some 3PLs having capacity again. But in terms of new warehouses, it's still quite challenging, and that's obviously driving prices up in warehousing space now, as well as transport, because we had 12 to 18 months of lead times for new trucks and, fuel rates obviously adding to it as well. So it's been an interesting development, and obviously all of this is influencing, our consumer price index, therefore, the inflation.
Sure. No, that's a really good analysis. I appreciate that, because, and it doesn't surprise me that you have a very good handle on warehousing rates and occupancy rates, because I know you were a director of business development for U-Tenant, an organisation which has got quite a high profile in the industry in Australia as well. I think it's Kyle, isn't it, that runs U-Tenant, which is a warehousing matchmaking company, yeah?
Yeah, I used to. So it's certainly a really good model to, more in occupier services. So I was focused on working with warehouse tenants and finding the best solutions for them in the market. Certainly a really good experience for myself to be exposed to that part of the industry as well.
Brilliant. So I want to talk to you a little bit now about your leadership journey, and your leadership journey specifically in relation to the industry itself. Looking at your profile and speaking to you when we've met, it's clear that you're very passionate about industry-related issues. You're a great speaker. I've seen you present and speak. In fact, I think you're a bit of a hot ticket in terms of getting you in to speak around industry matters at various events, at least in Australia. And so Transport Women in Australia, you are a director. You've been involved with that organisation for a little while now. Talk to us a little bit about what Transport Women in Australia is about, and then I want to talk to you about your role in that.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I've certainly looked around different industry organizations, and I decided to support Transport Women Australia. It is an amazing group of men and women, so more women than men, but we do not discriminate, which is really important to me, because I think if we want to, and in my view, it's all about achieving the potential we strive for. So having the opportunities to achieve what we want to achieve in our career. It's not necessarily for me about quotas and having the same, gender balance in every single role. So I really like Transport Women Australia, because we embrace obviously diversity and do not discriminate against anyone. We also support a lot of women and men in their career, and that so we have different initiatives. We, for instance, have a connecting mentoring program. We have a learning initiatives, a breakfast series. We have certain awards. We have a women driving transport career event. We are supported by a lot of large brand names, and we have a really exciting conference coming up 31st of May, 1st of June in 2024, next year in Melbourne. It's the Living the Dream conference, and we've actually created a song which is called Living the Dream, and I think it made it into the charts. So
it's incredible. Well done.
It's
and
really
are you
amazing.
Singing on it? Are you singing on it?
Definitely not. I'm actually, my husband is a hobby musician, and he would attest that this is not a good idea.
Well done.
But there's certainly some really, really talented ladies who contributed to that song as well. And it's all about raising awareness for our industry, because there's so many women who want to help, who are passionate about their caring roles in healthcare and education and so on. And really our industry is a very caring role. We bring everything to people. Like, we keep the country moving. If it's not for our industry, there would be, no food on the table.
And that's right. And of course, Australia, for our audience who may not be aware, is about the same size as the United States of America. I think there's only about 25 million people there, so it's about 10% of the population or less. But of course, that means we have these massive distances between the East Coast, the West Coast, the deep South, Adelaide, all the way up to the top end, which is in a total, it's several thousand miles difference. And we have these road trains, with some of them are 4 or 5 trailers long, and we have all the mining, of course, one of the biggest mining countries in the world. And I know there are an enormous amount of women working on these 1,000-ton trucks in the mines as well. So I'm sure a lot of those organisations are your members, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of these organizations. I don't want to, don't know how much advertisement I can do. So you can just look on the Transport Women Australia website just to find out about our sponsors. But we certainly have a lot of support. We also have our own truck to go around to schools and to show, young people, women and men, how to, what the experience is driving trucks, and they're all really cool with technology and, fitted out these days with GPS tracking and, very, very comfortable beds and so on. So it's obviously the world changed. And in the past, there used to be a lot of Australian truck drivers who took their kids on the road with them, and that sort of groomed the next generation. For safety reasons, that's no longer allowed. And now we need to come up with other ways to really really encourage young people to take up professions in our industries. And there's so many different roles, so it's very cool.
No, I know Transport Women in Australia is also a big advocate and advocacy to government about rule changes and laws, and also advocates very strongly for mental health as well, and people taking care of each other in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is, a lot of initiatives, and some of them don't seem to be, so common sense, but once you spell them out, they are. So for instance, there is a requirement to upgrade toilets along, the way, to make them safe and clean, to be, suitable, I guess, for both genders. And it's just little things like that where we, have an opportunity to raise awareness, because that will really make a difference to, I guess, the next generation of driving.
Yeah, well, I was a long-distance truck driver many, many moons ago in New Zealand, and I'm sure things have come on. It was very rudimentary in those days. You had to make do with the long journeys. So I'm sure there's been an enormous amount of value being added by the advocacy that you folks are putting up. Hey, Kat, look, you've had a fantastic career to date. I want to congratulate you again on the work that you're doing, not only in Transport Women in Australia, but in your career in general. And I know you're also a mum, so you're juggling all of this with being a mum as well. And it's been great to be able to nail you down and catch you, because I know it's been difficult for you to schedule in this meeting today. So I really appreciate it. I always like our guests to give our audience a little bit of a tip or advice. So I haven't prepared you for this, but as a young entrepreneur and as somebody who involves themselves in many, many different aspects of the logistics supply chain, and specifically the transport industry, what would be your recommendation for young people looking to get into a career in the logistics transport space, for example? What would your recommendation to them be as to how to make an entry into the sector?
Sure, it's really easy. Our sector doesn't require university degrees, even though if you have one, it can be of advantage. So you can literally just start applying for a job that may be in a warehouse or an administration role and work your way up. There's also opportunities for TAFE certificates. There's the option to study supply chain logistics. So there's different levels. There's various different roles, so anything from driving trucks to working in warehouses to working in administration, in marketing, sales, commercial operations, but also all the digital technology roles. So, especially warehouse automation, designing, warehouses, going then into construction project management space. So there's so many really cool careers in our industry. You just have to pick one and make a start and get in. And if you are committed to lifelong learning, that is really the key, I think, to have a career, because it never stops. The world always changes in our industry, and if you can keep up, then you have a great career ahead of you.
Awesome. Hey, Kat, I would expect no less than all of those bright ideas from you. Katharina Zink Attana, Chief Commercial Officer for Tasman Logistics Services, entrepreneur, professional in the industry, and Director of Transport Women in Australia. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us. I hope our audience has gained some value and input in not only what's going on in the industry in Australia, but also what's happening commercially and some of the trends that you've shared with us. Thank you so much. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, perhaps every 6 months, for a bit of an update on what's happening in Australia and the market in general.
Thank you, Kim. I really appreciate your time, and thank you to the audience for listening that far.
Thanks, Kat. Absolute pleasure always. Look forward to staying in touch, and thank you everybody for joining us on Logistics Executive TV.